So at this point, we're going to transition now to preparing our spirits and our minds to really receive the message today. We're lucky to have our own Pastor Adonia share a little bit more as we close out our existing sermon series about how we can all become God's hands and feet and really put who he is into action each and every day. So we're going to have an offering video play in about a minute. So take a moment to reflect, to close your eyes, and then Pastor Adonia will come up and share right after. Thank you.
Sitting at the stoplight, he can't be bothered by the heart cry written on the cardboard in her hands. Oh, but when she looks him in the eye, his heart is broken open wide, and he feels the hand of God reach out through him. As heaven touches her. Oh, 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 oh. We bring the kingdom come. Oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus help us carry you. Alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. There's silence at the table. He wants to talk, but he's not able. For all the shame that's locked in deep inside. Oh, but her words are the medicine when she says they can begin again. And forgiveness will set him free tonight. As heaven touches her. Oh, 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 oh. We bring the kingdom come. Oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus help us carry you. Alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. God put a million doors in the world for his love to walk through. One of those doors is you. I said God put a million doors in the world for his love to walk through. One of those doors is you. Kingdom come, oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus help us carry you. Alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom, oh, 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 oh. We bring the kingdom come, oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus help us carry you. Alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come.
Morning, everyone. Everybody make it okay today? I know that the Colfax was closed for that fun run, not a fun run. Race for the Cure. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm really glad that you could all find your way here today. It's really wonderful to see all of you. And I'm really excited that today we're finishing up this sermon series, which is on the second point of our vision. And this is our series, A Community Where God Dwells. And so we've been talking about community a lot, right, the last month or so. We've talked about what an ideal community looks like, how the church is a family, and the family is the church. how we're restructuring for both growth and harmony. And then last weekend, Youngill talked about, what is my role? What is each of our roles in the community? So, but no matter what the subject or the topic is, in the end, it all comes down to action and what we actually do with it, right? So this is what we're going to wrap it up with this week on being God's hands and feet. So this point of our vision that we're doing this series on is that we are a church that isn't a church, but a family where the experience of community, love, and God's grace abound. But where does this experience come from? Right? If we talk about experiencing community, love, and God's grace. While we can have experiences that are more spiritual through prayer, through realizations, through other people, most of our experience, even the experiences that impact our spirit, happen and begin here in the physical plane. It begins in real life. It's right in front of you. So the kind of experience that people have in our church or our community or our family will come from the environment that we create, because it's the environment where you experience things, right? This building, this relationship, this conversation. It will come from the actual words that we say and the deeds that we do. So I have a little quote here. This is from 1 John chapter 3, verses 17 to 18 says, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and truth." So I feel like that's a good lead into this topic of being God's hands and feet. But why, I kind of question myself, why did we choose this as our title, being God's hands and feet? Why do we talk about that? Why is it important? Why is it a thing that we try to be God's hands and feet? Because after all, isn't God omniscient and omnipotent and all-present and all-knowing and all-powerful? But actually, if we look even to the very, very beginning, in the beginning of Genesis, God created human beings to experience love in reality, right? And actually, all of the Bible is a history of God working through people. I don't know if you've heard this song called Broken, but I really like this song. There's a part of it where it says, "The pages of history tell me it's true. It's never the perfect. It's always the ones with the scars that you use." And we can see that throughout the Bible. God doesn't just do things, but things happen and history progresses because of people and God working through people. So it's obvious that there's a relationship there, that there's a necessity for us and for our actions to happen in this world. Essentially, God wants to see love actualized, right? God, I think of it as kind of like when a mother is pregnant before there's a baby, right? Let's think of God before there was a world. A mother before the baby is born has love, right? Love exists, but it's not in actuality yet. There's not an actual relationship because the baby isn't there yet, right? And so same thing with God. I believe God created out of love, that there was love, but that God wanted to experience it. He wanted to give it, and then he wanted to receive it. He wanted to experience love in reality, and that is through people. So being God's hands and feet. It's like, what would God do if he had a body in this earth? But since God doesn't have a body, then what do we do as the extension of God, being God's hands and feet? But in the song, which you might get to hear, there's this part that goes, God made a million doors in this world for his love to walk through, and one of those doors is you. But to be honest, even until this morning, actually, I was a little bit struggling with this title. I feel like it's so cliche. It's something that I feel like there's probably thousands of sermons that have been given on this topic by people all over the world on being God's hands and feet. And we hear things like, okay, feed the hungry, love your neighbor. And while we know that they are good, it doesn't always have an impact on us. So I was really searching for, what is my message? Or what does God really want to touch us with? Rather than just hearing about love and being God's hands and feet. So I began to think of my own experience. And my own experiences of having been loved. The way that I feel that God would want to love me. And if you can think of this for yourself too, the experience of receiving a pure, unselfish, God-like love is very memorable. I'm sure you have moments that stand out in your life where you knew that it was something special. And it's very, very real. Even though love is not something you can see with your eyes, but it leaves a really deep impression on you. I know for myself that some of my experiences, I know that when I am stuck sometimes, anybody feel stuck sometimes? Sometimes I feel a little stuck, and I feel stuck in my own selfishness, or I'm frustrated with my situation and I want to blame somebody for it. Who do we usually blame when something goes wrong? Many times it's somebody who's close to us, right? Like my husband. And I want to lash out sometimes. But then sometimes I get this experience where my husband loves me anyway. And he embraces me, and even though I'm lashing out and then I get met with love, it's one of the most powerful experiences that you can have in a marriage. We had an experience, I know Mike shared maybe a month or two ago, about how Nathan's bike was stolen out of our backyard, pretty much from under our noses. And we were so, frustrated about it and wanted to get back. And that's our initial feeling. But, I just reached out on nextdoor.com, and I said, hey, there's this bike, if anybody sees it. And then I had all these messages pouring in from neighbors of, what can I do? Or my neighbor has a bike that they're not using, I can bring it by tomorrow morning. And somebody offered to buy him a new bike. And then, by the time Nathan woke up the next morning, there was already a new bike on the porch. And it was this feeling of, this is going above and beyond what is our normal daily experience of relationships, or what we kind of know as love, but it's like a different kind of love. The twins just had their birthday this last week, and we had this thing that we really wanted to get for the twins, their sparring gear for martial arts. And oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure if we went on Craigslist or eBay, we could find something for $50, but it's like $260 for each of them, and we've been we want them to be able to have it and to be able to go farther with their martial arts, but we also don't just want to dish out $500 either. But my experience, they wanted to offer that, for their birthday, and so it felt so much. I felt so much like undeserved love, something that I was not able to offer to my children, but God was loving them through their grandparents. Even after my kayak race this summer, Hisako-san took time. I know she's a very busy woman, but she wanted to make sure she worked it out so that she could come over and give me a massage, just because she wanted to offer that. So these are, the more I think about it, the more I think of different people and how I've experienced God's love through different people. And it's not always through things. Sometimes it's through forgiveness. But these experiences, when we have these moments where we feel undeserving or we weren't expecting it, but where the love is, we know it's real, we know it's pure, and we know that it actually comes from God. This is a powerful experience. It can be humbling, it can be transformational, and if you get to listen to the song, you'll find there's an example of this husband who is too ashamed of his life, too ashamed of maybe things that he's done to speak to his wife. But then the wife comes to him and says, we can start again. And it sets him free. So when I talk about being God's hands and feet, rather than thinking of it as a cliche sermon title, instead I want you to think of these moments in your life where you've experienced God's love through people. I really feel like that having these kinds of experiences and hopefully being able to give beyond the other end, right? The giving end is, I really feel, what makes life life. But people really aren't used to that, are they? I think that we're kind of trained to expect to get our just reward, right? You get what you pay for. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We expect to have the kind of to get as much out of it as we put into it. Not a bad thing, but I feel like that's kind of our mostly day-to-day life experience. And I was beginning to think, is this why we're working so hard in our life? Because to avoid the consequences of bad decisions, avoid the consequences of mistakes and failures. I don't want to experience that, so I better keep myself out of trouble. Or I better, it's fear-based. I feel like we don't want to get what's coming to us if we do something wrong. So I was thinking, is that what we're doing in our life? Is that why we do the things we do? Is that why we get the job we get? Is that why we choose the spouse that we choose? Is that how we go through life? Not always. I think sometimes it's also a bit more motivational. The flip side of the coin is perhaps not that it's out of fear, but that we know by working hard, making good choices, then we'll get ahead in life. We're motivated by the rewards that we will get if we put in all the time and the effort that's necessary. But that's still the same coin of you get what you get because that's what the reward or the consequence that you get for your decisions. But then even if we're motivated to do well for ourselves, then would we ever be motivated to give or to help or to dig deeper in our pockets or to find time on our busy schedule to volunteer, to go above and beyond when there's not necessarily reward waiting for us? Or to concern yourself with somebody else's life when you've got your own life going on, right? Perhaps you can relate with this feeling in your life. I find myself in both of these areas sometimes but it's still mostly centered on what I can get. It's centered on me. But we know that that's not life. That's not what life is meant to be. And when we have these experiences of when God touches us, when people can touch our hearts, we know that that's not where that stems from. What I really felt when I felt like I caught the heart of this topic was that we're not just tools or instruments of God, but that actually we are children of God, that we were designed and created for goodness and to have this quality that gives without thinking about what you receive, that goes above and beyond, that can go the extra mile to make a little difference in somebody's life. And it's not out of fear, and it's also not out of greed, but because we're children of God, because there's a part of us that is an embodiment, some kind of embodiment of God's character in each and every one of us, and that is where we find fulfillment in life. And it's when we act out of that part of ourselves that allows for this experience that we're talking about of community and love and God's grace. So, a little other side point I want to talk about when it comes to being God's hands and feet. I don't know, what do you think? There's many things might come to mind, like feeding the hungry. Things have been going on in our community. We've been having a lot of babies, so people have been bringing meals to new mothers, helping people when they've got difficulties with their rent. And it might be, if a pastor's come and ask you to MC, then maybe that's something you do. But there's just limitless and endless ways to give and to help. So you might be thinking, well, what is my role? How do I do that? What am I called to do? And I think that there's two ways that this goes, okay? There's a time to create, and there's a time to step in when a need arises. So later on in our vision statement, we're going to go into how each one of us is called into a ministry, that God doesn't create minions. We're not little minions that just follow orders, but actually God created each one of us as co-creators. So there's something that God puts on each one of our hearts. I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are, how young you are, what skills you have or what skills you don't think you have. There's some way that each person can contribute and create, right, by giving. And so some of you may have already know exactly what you're doing with that. Some of you have already created your own ministry, a way to serve. And some of you might find that later. But also, and I think it may be a little bit less glamorous than creating your own ministry, but to step in when a need arises. I think sometimes we get kind of caught up in what we feel like I want to do, what are my goals, what I feel like Mike and I have a vision for the community, so we have an idea of what we feel like we're called to do, but sometimes that's not the thing that needs to be done right now. Sometimes there's a family that needs a little bit of extra love. Sometimes there's another situation that has to be dealt with. And if we don't do those things, then there's a gap where God was not able to step in, right? So I feel like it's important for us to be aware of opportunities that come our way so that we can step in and fill the need when it arises. And I think best is when we can do both, when we use our creative abilities to fill a need. Because honestly, if you are called to something, there's probably a reason why God put that on your heart to do. But no matter what, when we put ourselves in an unselfish position to fill a need, to bless someone else, God can guide and bless us through our service. And I said it earlier that unselfish giving is when there's no reward to be had. But actually, that's not true. Whenever we give, there's always a blessing that comes back. And I believe the rewards of giving, they just multiply in our life. So I hope that gives some kind of a feeling of what kind of an environment, what kind of relationships that we want to cultivate in our lives and in our church community, in our family. But sometimes it's just not easy, right? Otherwise, if it was easy, then everybody would be experiencing that level of love and joy and fulfillment in their life, right? But why is it that those experiences are, when we do experience that, why are they so special? And why are they so few and far between? Because it's not easy. I have this quote here. This is by Reverend Moon, the founder of our faith. Let's see here. Okay. I'm just going to read this one too. This applies a bit earlier. Each one of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So this is relating to when I was talking about how each one of us has a calling or gifts. We each have a reflection of God's Spirit and in our life that we can do, right? If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. And if anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides. Our journey through life consists of becoming a son or a daughter, a brother or sister, and a husband or wife who can receive and practice God's love. It is a journey to become a husband or wife. It is a journey to become a husband or wife and to love our sons and daughters from the position of second creators, just as God loved Adam and Eve. The beginning is love, the process is love, and the end is also love. As the perfect produce, after being manufactured according to the specifications of love, we go to the kingdom of heaven. When we actualize the kingdom of heaven, we do not do so as individuals, but as whole families. And I love here how he's talking about this is a journey. And this continues it. I want you to make this feeling passionately real down to the marrow of your bones. You cannot just will this to happen one day. You must make daily efforts and struggle to overcome the limitations of your heart. Doesn't that feel very real to you? Because we want this. We all agree with this beautiful vision of becoming, true sons and daughters and parents and beginning in love and growing in love and ending in love and actualizing the kingdom of heaven. And we shouldn't discredit it or be jaded by the idea that that's too hard. He wants us to make this feeling passionately real. But no, you can't just imagine it to happen. You can't just really, really want it and then it's there. We must make daily efforts and struggle to overcome the limitations of our hearts. So I just really love the realness of this quote because we have many limitations, right? Many of us did not, I think if we all grew up experiencing this kind of wonderful love, the kind of love that we don't always deserve, the kind of love that moves us and that touches us and motivates us. If that was just like what life was, then it wouldn't be that hard to then turn around and give that to other people. But who experienced that every day of their life growing up? We didn't. So we have limitations, and I don't think God blames us for having limitations of our hearts, but he does call us to go above and beyond them. I think because of our limitations, it's easy to go on autopilot, right? It's easy to just live in this realm of fear. So I don't want to end up in jail. I don't want to lose my significant other. I don't want to lose my relationship with my children, so I better try to do my best, or I have to do harder. I have to be better. Or it's easy to live with this autopilot of self-service, where I got to make it. So I'm going to give my all. I'm going to work 14 hours a day. I'm going to do everything I can so that I don't end up like that person. Right? Our limitations easily turn us into autopilot. But while we have those limitations, we also have this undeniable part of ourselves. That is God. And that is why I know that this kind of community and that this kind of love is possible. And when we remind ourselves of that, when we connect to that, then we can remember, I can do something today for somebody else. I may not have a lot. I may not have a lot of energy. I might not have a lot of money. I may not have a lot of food. But there's something I can do for my neighbor. There's something I can do for my community. There's something I can do for God. So it is a journey, so have patience. And we do it as a family. We do it in our relationships, and we do it as a community. And like we mentioned, the family is the church, and the church is the family. Our families constitute our church, but also, our church is an extension of our families. What we do in our families makes a difference to my neighbor on the other side of the aisle at church. If I can overcome the limitation of my heart with my children, then I can overcome my judgment or my limitation of heart to that person sitting over there. Nothing we do affects ourselves alone. Everything affects our family. It affects what Juan Tete does in the front seat, affects Natasha in the back seat. So we do it as a family, we do it as a community. And I just want to finish with one last quote, which may or may not be here. Let me find it. There it is. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And this is from Jesus. You know, in the Old Testament, there was the 12 commandments, and there's actually hundreds of laws of what to eat and not to eat and what time to do things. But Jesus said, this is my commandment. It's one commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And when you think about those moments where you have experienced a pure, unselfish, undeniable love, then we know, whether it came from your husband or whether it came from a stranger or whether it came from your parent, that love is an expression of God's love. So as we have been loved, let's turn around and find a way to give that to our neighbor. Thank you very much. Let's please join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, good morning. We greet you this cloudy, cool fall morning, and we do it with joy in our hearts, Heavenly Parent. Thank you for bringing us all together today as families, as brothers and sisters. Heavenly Parent, many times I feel like I can come into service and be caught up in what happened this morning, and my kids aren't wearing shoes, and I've got to get this ready. But by the end of service, Heavenly Parent, I have reconnected to something bigger than just myself. Heavenly Parent, I pray that you can be that possibility for each person here, although we each came in to this chapel individually or in our own families, Heavenly Parent, we're going to be leaving it all together as one family. And we'll go different directions in our lives this week, but I pray that we can not be unaware of how you want to love our neighbor, of how we can do something for another person, Heavenly Parent. Your love is so unimaginably great. Your love is so encompassing. But you're limited in that you do not have the physical hands and feet to administer that love with, Heavenly Parent. But we have the calling, we have the blessing of being able to do that for you, Heavenly Parent. So I pray we don't take that lightly, we don't take that for granted, and that we can find some way to touch another person's life this week, and that we can bring you more into our lives in reality, in actuality, in front of us. Thank you for your love and your patience with us. We know we fall short so many times, but you know where we come from. You know where we're at. You know we're working to do better, Heavenly Parent. So we thank you for your endless patience and love, and just pray that you can be with us as we take our next step this week. And I offer this prayer in my name, Michael and Adonia Hendrick of the Blessed Central Family. Amen and Aju. Thank you, everybody.
Let's give Pastor Adonia a round of applause. Such a touching sermon and a really beautiful prayer. Thank you for pouring your heart out. And I think that for me, I really echoed and I really embodied the aspect of the process, right? I had a personal experience just last night where I got the call at 9 p.m. if a long-lost family relative could stay with me, right? And it was really easy to say no, but that kind of, when I was listening, it came back to me of, who do I want to be? What kind of culture do I want to create? And how can I overcome that limitations, right, of heart? And he was able to stay with us last night. So it was pretty timely, and I can't wait to hear all of your own stories and all of your own victories too. And I hope that we can all support each other throughout that process. So thank you again, Pastor Adonia, for channeling that wisdom and sharing that with us today. Okay, and we're going to transition now. We have a couple of local announcements, since there's always activities and events going on that we want to allow everybody to plug into. So our first one is that we're having a Who Are We presentation today. It's going to be held by our own Pastor Mike in the French ministry room. And the purpose of this session is for you all to get connected around where is the future of our community going, who are we, and what our vision is and next steps. So please come if you haven't heard this before. It's a fantastic session. And this is for existing members, new members, and guests, anybody who wants to know a little bit more around who we are as a community. That's happening today, right after lunch in the French ministry room. The next one is that one of our church families needs some help, and they're looking for further support to help their housing situation stay consistent. So for anybody who'd like to give, please come downstairs. The Workman family are right here. Everybody can wave to them. They're a fantastic couple, and we're so lucky to have them. So they're selling brownies downstairs for $3 a piece. So please come downstairs, help them out, and really put love into action in supporting the Workman family. The next one is that we have a Bible study this Thursday at 7 p.m. and the topic's going to be, will the kingdom of God be in heaven or on earth? So come on out, join us, and let's have a discussion around this topic, and that's going to be in the cafe this Thursday at 7 p.m. Additionally, on Friday, we have a movie night, as we've continued to do, and this movie is called The War Room. And for those who might not be super familiar with this movie, it just came out in 2015, and it's filled with heart, humor, and wit, and The War Room follows a couple, Tony and Elizabeth, who seem externally to have everything put together, right? They have great jobs, a beautiful daughter, their dream home, but the appearances can be really deceiving, and in reality, their marriage has become that war zone, and their daughter is the collateral damage. So come on out to really understand how they are able to work through this with the guidance of an older, wiser woman, and discover how to fight for their family and create the reality that they want to live. So this is going to be this Friday at 7 p.m. Definitely a meaningful movie. Highly recommend coming out and joining us. Additionally, there's an upcoming cleanup day on Saturday, October 6th, which is this upcoming Saturday. It's a great opportunity to meet neighbors and do something together as a family and contribute to the local community here. There's age-appropriate activities for kids and also free lunch provided. So you can sign up via email, or you can honestly just show up. So if you have any other questions, talk to Pastor Mike in the back. But it's really going to be a great event to kind of plug in and invest in the local community here this Saturday. So we encourage you all to come out if you're interested in putting your service and faith into action locally. And as you all know, we had a fantastic series called the Marriage Course in Colorado this past summer, and it was a huge hit. I personally attended, and we're so glad to see that there's another one coming up. It's going to be in November. The sign-up, it's November 6th to December 18th. Is that right, Adonia? The sign-up? Yes, okay. Thanks for keeping me honest, Andrew. So the signups will be available through this time frame, and each night will feature a date night and marriage enriching content and support. So maybe mark your calendars, know that this is coming, and if you can't come, think of couples who could potentially benefit from attending the marriage course coming up at the end of the year. Our next announcement is that there's an upcoming series of Divine Principle events happening in Las Vegas at the International Peace Education Center. So this is really our cornerstone location where we have really the best-in-class type of content and education that we offer to new members, existing members, and anybody interested in learning a little bit more about the Divine Principle on a deeper level. So if you're interested in attending, please talk to the pastors and note that there are upcoming dates in October, November, and December as well. And they range from a 4-day experience to a 7-day experience as well. And then this is a picture of the IPEC Center, if you're not familiar, a really beautiful building. And then our last announcement here is we want to thank the Stein family who will be cooking and cleaning next Sunday, and a big thank you to the Okada family for cooking and cleaning today. So let's give them a round of applause and appreciation and gratitude.